So this is going to be a kind of a variation of a video that I did yesterday, but I'm going to approach it from a little different angle. In the 4 years that I've been online, I have created in my YouTube account, I have over 800 videos. And I have created at least 4 different websites. Okay, this is in my 4 years. Now, this video is going to highlight what I consider to be the biggest philosophical blunder and also the biggest contradiction that Darth has made since I have started my channel over 4 years ago. I did a similar video probably maybe 2 or 2.5 years ago, which was then, at that time, I had considered it his biggest philosophical blunder. But this, what he has actually said recently, or what I'm going to show you in this video, it outdoes anything that he has ever said. I would even consider this to be another defeater for his worldview, which it's kind of a different way. I've never thought that I could find something like this. Of course, because I'm just going by what he says. But due to the fact that he has made a comment which is so radically, emphatically ridiculous, I don't think that if I was to scour the internet, or even, if I was to go out and contact anyone that I've ever contacted before in the 4 years that I've been online, and if I was to ask them this question, which I will, I'll ask it in the end. But if I was to approach everyone that I've ever spoken to or chatted with, I don't think any of them, not even one of them, would agree with Darth after they see this video. They would not agree. They would not maintain the statement, or if this is true, they would not agree to it. And that includes any and all of the Christians, or any and all of the people who have labeled themselves Christians that he has chatted with or fraternized with on a regular basis. Now, before I get to this particular clip, I'm going to give you a little background again of some of the things, I could call them bullet points, of things that Darth has said about his own worldview during the 4 years that I've seen. All right. Some of this predates the time that I've actually been online, but it's on YouTube, and I recorded it, or I recorded the original recording. So I have that, and I'm going to show you these bullet points to give you an idea of what kind of a position Darth has built himself, or actually has constructed for himself. He did this all by himself, by the claims that he has made, by the statements that he has made about his own worldview. What I'm about to show you is a partial representation of this particular worldview and some of the things that he has said about it. Okay, so what I did here, I wrote it out, and I'm going to read this, and you can more or less just follow along. So, Darth's worldview, okay? Truth is only attainable in a worldview that is true. Now remember, all of these bullet points, he's referring to his own position or his own worldview. A worldview is either true or not true because it's all-encompassing. A worldview is either true in its entirety or it is not entirely true. Not accepting natural and special revelation leads to chaos, absurdity, where one is doomed to incoherence. Christianity is the only rational worldview. Darth Dawkins is speaking only from a biblical perspective. He says he speaks only from a biblical perspective. And by the way, I'm going to put the links to these bullet points. I will put it in the description area of this video. It is impossible to deny the God of the Bible. And last, for the sake of this video anyway, it is impossible to deny the Christian worldview, which of course he's referring to his fundamentalist presuppositional worldview, because he says that if it's not presuppositional, it's not biblical. All right, so there are some of the bullet points. Now I'm going to show you 2 or 3 clips where he was chatting with some people and they were asking him some questions about his worldview. Here are those 2 or 3 clips.
Because the message of Christianity, as it is spoken by me, the denial of which leads to incoherence.
This is definitely dark.
Darth, could you be wrong about everything you claim to know?
No.
Now, is your knowledge of God provisional to your limited, fallible nature? Yes or no?
No.
So you're infallible.
I answered your question. I answered your question. Now, are you using a provision
contingent upon anything external to himself? The Bible makes it very clear that God is in his being self-identical. The Bible makes it very clear that God cannot contradict himself, nor can he lie. It is.
Okay, so I'm going to recap on those 4 items that he just stated. One of them, and this is very important, he said that he's only going to give the biblical perspective, and that he speaks only from the biblical perspective. He also said when he was asked, could you be wrong about anything or everything that you claim to know? He answered by saying no. When he was speaking with FloydFP, FloydFP asked him a similar question about his provisional knowledge of his worldview, of the God worldview. And Floyd asked him, is he fallible? Or limited? Is his knowledge limited to his fallible nature? And Darth answered by saying no. All right, and he also stated that the message of Christianity, as it is spoken by him, if we deny it, it will lead to incoherence. So this is the position that he has worked himself into. Now, here is another very important clip which I'm going to show you right now, and it may seem out of place, but once we get to the end of this video, then you'll understand exactly how incriminating this particular clip is. Here is that clip.
Absolute. Do you know who Stephen Hawking was?
Yeah.
Okay. Stephen Hawking said that the laws of nature as we know them break down at the Big Bang.
Yeah, that's when they all started. All of our
then they're not
at the Big Bang.
If they began, then they're not absolute.
So Darth there was referring to the late Stephen Hawking, and he referred to something that Stephen Hawking said about the laws of nature breaking down at the Big Bang. And he was telling this particular opponent, I guess you would call it, and he was more or less sounding as if he was supporting, or at least to the point where it is worth mentioning, what Hawking said. Let me put it that way. So Darth can go either way whenever he refers to scientists or PhDs, whether they are Christian or not Christian, okay? So in this particular case, though, it sounds like he's using what Hawking said, countering what his opponent said. Let me put it that way. But what Darth just referred to, again, you're going to see at the end of this video just how incriminating that is. Okay, now there is one more clip here that I'm going to let you listen to, and this is something that Darth has said on several occasions, and it is very important, and it relates to this particular video very strongly.
Christianity did not start 2,000 years ago. Historically, it started in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Okay, now we are going to get to the nitty-gritty, okay? What I did here, I made a little kind of a line chart. It is very crude. It is not a representation of any means as far as the scale, but it represents, I could call it a timeline maybe, or a chronological sequence of events. Let me put it that way. But again, as I said, I'm not trying to show any type of chronological scale. It's just a very crude chart, okay? So what I did there was I wrote, I'm going starting from the left and I'm going to the right. The first thing you'll see is the point which represents today. It would be our time, okay? That would be representing right now or today. Then on the second point, I have this 3-year ministry of Christ. Now, the reason why I did that is because Darth was mentioning Christianity, and he said that it did not start 2,000 years ago. It started at Genesis 1:1. So that 3-year ministry, depending on which source you go to, because I went online actually and I typed, when did Christianity begin? And there is a variety of different answers. The first two were even different from each other. But I think one of them said it started in the 3rd century AD, and then the second one said it started at the time of Christ's ministry. Okay. Now, the third line, or the third point on my line chart, is Genesis 1:1. I think I cut it off a little, but remember now, I'm not talking about just Genesis, because Darth mentioned a passage. He mentioned actually the first verse in the Bible, which is Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's when Darth said that Christianity began. And by the way, I checked out every single version. Let me start over. Every single English version that I could find online. And I could not find any variation as to the first verse in the Bible. They all started with Genesis 1:1. There was nothing prior to that in any of the versions that I looked at. And it was always the same thing as far as saying, I'm paraphrasing, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So Darth is equating that point on this timeline with when Christianity actually started. Okay? Okay, now what I have did here is I've added a little section onto the timeline. And I'm titling it Pre-Christianity Before Genesis 1:1. Now remember, according to Darth, we speak, or humans speak, on an analogical level. All right, so right now, I'm giving that to Darth. All right, I'm speaking right now on an analogical level when I title this Pre-Christianity Before Genesis 1:1. Now, remember, there are those who say that the laws of nature break down at the Big Bang. We'll call it the Big Bang, or it's been commonly referred to as the Big Bang. Darth says that he does not believe in the Big Bang, but Darth does say that Christianity began in Genesis 1:1. And for this discussion, that's good enough. That's accurate enough. So the question I would pose right now is, what about before Genesis 1:1? If you want to call it before, I'm using that word in a time index, but remember, there are those who say that there was no time before Genesis 1:1 or before the Big Bang. There was no time, so to refer to it as before would be incoherent, okay? But for the sake of this video, I'm referring to it as pre-Christianity. Because remember, this is the important thing. Darth believes that the God of the Bible existed before Genesis 1:1. All right, that God of the Bible, his fundamentalist, apologetic, or presuppositional God existed before Genesis 1:1. Genesis 1:1 was an act or an act of creation by this particular God. So before that, before any of the universe actually came into being, this particular God already was. Okay? So for the purposes of this video, what you're looking at, this timeline, that's how I'm trying to illustrate it. Okay? So we're talking about up to the Big Bang and before that. That's what we're talking about so far. Now, I'm going to let you listen to another video clip about where Darth talks about what one would need to do in order to falsify a worldview. Here is that. This is one of many clips. He has talked many times about falsifying a worldview. He has said that the Christian worldview is impossible to deny. He has said that the God of the Bible is impossible to deny. So let's listen to this clip. Here it is.
In order to falsify A, you have to say not A. Okay? You can only falsify a proposed state of affairs by pointing to a state of affairs that contradicts it.
Okay, now with that, I am going to really get to the point. Okay, all right. Now, here is the comment that Darth made. All right, and what I suggest you do, and this is the same suggestion that I mentioned in my previous video. Okay, what I suggest you do, if you are sitting down right now, or go ahead and sit down, but I would install a seatbelt and a shoulder harness on the chair that you are sitting, all right? Because once you hear this, it is going to be so radically, astronomically, emphatically unbelievable. And remember, this statement is coming out of the same mouth as the guy who says that he can't be wrong. His provisional knowledge cannot be wrong. It's impossible to deny his worldview, and it's impossible to deny the biblical God. And he says that he speaks only from a biblical perspective. So this statement, if he is to remain consistent with his previous statements, he is saying this from the biblical point of view. And remember, keep in mind, as you are watching this, what I did was I actually went back a little bit. I went back before the actual, I'll call it a punchline. And the reason why I did that is because I do not want anyone to think that I'm taking him out of context. So I deliberately went back a little bit further. Now, of course, I have no way to control what people are going to say or what they're going to think about this clip, especially Darth Dawkins and also any of my skeptics. I have no way to control their reaction, but I am showing what he said, and I'm showing not only the punchline, but I'm giving about a minute before that and about a minute after he says this, just to show that I'm trying to be as accurate as possible. I am not attempting to take him out of context or to quote mine. This is the statement in context that he made. Here is that statement. And remember, keep in mind, while you're listening to this, remember about the statement earlier, the one where he was talking about the laws of nature break down at the Big Bang, or the laws of nature break down at Genesis 1:1. Here's that statement.
Okay? Now, I can go through the process of basically how God makes us to know that he exists at a very young age.
I wasn't asking for that. I was just asking for your personal experience, if you had any.
Well, my personal experience is what happens to everybody, okay? At a certain point, you realize that there is something that is keeping everything the same while allowing some things to change. And then the question will automatically arise once we have a certain amount of neurological development. Is that one thing not like me, that it's not a mind, or is it a mind? Okay. Now, sometimes parents will get to that concept before a child at a very young age thinks that thought.
That's what I was asking.
Even for Aboriginals in the Amazonian jungle. But you see, there are certain people say, well, what about these remote people who don't believe in God? Look, this is called worshiping the creation rather than the creator. There are certain people groups, small in number, who decide to eschew believing in a supreme being and just believe in creation is their ultimate source. But you will find that even pre-Christianity, right, that there is widespread acknowledgement of a creator, although they may have other additional beliefs that we may or may not accept from a biblical or a non-biblical thing. But the notion of a singular, concrete, supreme being is widespread throughout world history. Now, there are times that there are certain cultures and societies that abandon this, and then they adopt ideas like the Greek and Roman pantheon and things like that. Right.
So
but let me just say one more thing. The fact that some cultures or nationalities abandon the idea of a supreme being and creator and adopt a polytheistic notion is not a defeater for belief in a supreme being.
Fuck your Christianity.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Darth just said that pre-Christianity, and remember, he said that Christianity started at Genesis 1:1. He said pre-Christianity, there were a small number of groups who were speaking about a particular topic. It doesn't matter, it's really beside the point what that topic was. It could have been anything. But the point is, he said that this took place pre-Christianity. So in other words, it took place before Genesis 1:1. Now, let that soak in. Think about that. And remember, this is the guy that comes up challenging atheists and non-believers and wants people to step up to the plate to defend their worldview. The statement that he made, it was metaphysically, intellectually, philosophically, and transcendentally a huge blunder and a huge mistake when we look at what he has previously said. That's why I consider this to be the biggest blunder I've ever witnessed. It is without question, as far as I'm concerned, the most completely asinine, ridiculous, double facepalm, but stupid remark I've ever heard. The ramifications of that statement, think about it. He's actually saying, whether he admits it or not, or whether he agrees with it, or whether, well, of course, he's not going to admit his error. Because remember, Darth Dawkins has the biggest pair of balls in the world. He's the biggest man in the world. So he will not admit he's wrong on this. But remember the chart that I showed you at the beginning of this video. The position that he has worked himself into is basically equal to that of being infallible. I even spoke with, or I shouldn't say spoke, but I had a text exchange with FloydFP. This was after he had spoke with Darth, and that was after Darth had said that his provisional knowledge about his worldview, he cannot be wrong, or whatever the words were. Darth answered no. And Floyd said that was basically equivalent to claiming that he is infallible. And remember, there have been a good many times where Darth has said he has used the argument, or he has presented this part of this line of thinking, I should call it, where he says, if there is a God which could make someone inerrantly know something, if that God could exist, and if he will question his opponents and say, could there be a God? If God is omnipotent or omnipresent, could God make somebody know something without error? So Darth has elevated his own philosophizing or his philosophical skills. He is quite impressed with himself. Remember, Darth is the guy that said that he defeated 8 professional PhDs or philosophers. He defeated all of them. He says that they all folded like lawn chairs. Remember, Darth's worldview is impossible to deny. So, okay, folks, remember Darth said that pre-Christianity, there were people or groups of people, and remember, he speaks only from a biblical perspective, and his worldview is impossible to deny. So you cannot deny this. You cannot deny what he just said if he wants to remain consistent with what he says. If he were a real serious, or someone that would be taken seriously, if he ever hears this video, if he values truth in any way whatsoever, if he values philosophy and being philosophically coherent and philosophically consistent, if he values that, he would go ahead and make a correction. I doubt we're going to see that because he's got too much invested already and he is too impressed with his own philosophical skills. So, remember that there was a particular verse in the Bible. The word philosophy, the word itself, is actually used only one time. And it is actually presented as a warning. I'm not going to quote right now the exact verse, but I have in the past, and actually I think more than one video. But it speaks about that to be very careful about people that will come to you speaking about philosophy or presenting a philosophy which is not in line with the Bible. So I'm going to end this video by saying that remember, Darth said that a worldview is either true in its entirety or it is not entirely true. So you need to decide, whoever you are that is listening to this, you need to make a decision as to whether or not you think Darth's worldview is either entirely true or it is not entirely true. That's a decision that you need to make. If you can swallow this, if you can actually swallow what he just coughed up, hey, more power to you. I'm not going to spend any time trying to convince you otherwise. I'm not. You're as free as a bird to believe Darth's worldview, either part of it or in its entirety. And I'm not going to spend any time trying to convince you otherwise. I'm just going to put it out there. This is what he said. If he wants to, or if anyone wants to say that he didn't say anything in this video, when I show those clips of what he said, if you think that he didn't say it, fine. Okay, so I'm going to end this by saying that as far as I'm concerned, I consider this to be nothing short of a complete defeat of his worldview. It has already been done, but this could be another way to look at it, or another defeater. Darth's worldview has been defeated. And if you think otherwise, like I said, if you're going to swallow what he just coughed up, hey, if you want to hitch your rope to that star, be my guest. Okay, thank you for watching, and please leave a comment.
Here she comes, right at us. Watch them come together. There it is. Look out. Wow, some smash.
From a biblical, I'm only going to give you the biblical perspective.
I want your perspective.
I'm giving you, my perspective is the biblical perspective. Okay, you're
belief. And by the way, I'm sure you're aware that I only defend Christian theism. In Christian theism,